I represent as the initiator, spokesperson, and coordinator of two groups, one national, the Group of Concerned Parents of Barbados, and one regional, the Caribbean Coalition for Exam Redress. We are informal coalitions of education stakeholders that came together back in 2020. And the reason for that is that there was a clear crisis. There were thousands of children who were crying out for redress. And we found, sadly, that the traditional or standard formal entities that we would have expected to advocate for the children were not as nimble as is required in a time of crisis. So we came together organically and continued our advocacy. And here we are in the 5th academic year after 2020. Unfortunately, too many of the same issues remain. So I will walk you through what those issues are. And as this slide indicates, we consider ourselves constructive change agents, working to ventilate issues and to demonstrate and suggest a clear, optimal path forward to address not just the annual challenges every year, but the underlying fundamental causes that are manifesting in these annual challenges. The intention and the objective is to remain as a permanent regional parent and student advocacy group, and that we request that as parents and students that we are value stakeholders, not in words, but in deeds, and to have a seat at the table as part of the decision-making process relating to CARICOM education. We all know that diversity of input and perspective only strengthens and enhances decision-making. Moving on to the next slide. Right, I won't bore you again with my background, but essentially what I have found useful, and I suspect in years to come, hopefully the fundamental issues will be redressed finally. And this is possibly going to be a business case study at our University of the West Indies. Many people do not appreciate that the public education service is a service, but it's also a business. And there are certain fundamentals of business as it relates to governance, as it relates to stakeholder engagement, as it relates to communications, as it relates to crisis management, as it relates to business process improvement that are germane to this current crisis that relates to the CXC exam administration. What I have a background, not just nationally, but also in the BVI, where I set up the first Ernst & Young office. And I also did business development throughout Southeast Asia for a number of years. So all of that informs my presentation and my offering. But fundamentally, I am a proud Caribbean woman and a mother and an empathetic individual, and that informs the pursuit of justice that drives me to do what I do. I won't bother to go through in detail what our achievements have been, but in a nutshell, back in 2020, the initial response was suboptimal. The students, parents, teachers, concerns were ignored initially, and that resulted in an outpouring of concern, whether it was petitions that were signed cumulatively by 30,000 individuals throughout the Caribbean, street protests, which we had several of in Barbados. The other jurisdictions did attempt to have street protests, but it was in the height of COVID. So obviously that mitigated what we could do. And so there were many aspects and components of what we did in terms of trying to bring to the public domain the situation and the reasons, and also to request accommodation and attention from the authorities for justice for the children. Moving on. Right. So let me set the table to indicate to you the annual challenges that, as I have indicated, are symptoms of underlying challenges within the administration, both within CXC and, in fairness, without CXC. In the education ecosystem, as the chair of CXC, Sir Hilary Beckles referred to, the interlinkages between CXC and the constituent CARICOM ministries of education that administer the CXC exams. I need to go back to 2020 again, because that cannot be, I would need another hour to really go into the detail of the disaster that happened in 2020. And for those of you that might not be aware, in 2020, due to the pandemic, CXC determined that they would remove one of the 3 papers that they normally assess grading on, and have 2 papers. So they removed the paper 2, which is the long form question paper, and just the multiple choice paper and the SBA's, the student-based assessments remained. And the grading that they initiated, they refer to as the modified grading approach. That approach clearly had major challenges, because when the results were released, the 22nd of September 2020 at approximately 4:30 p.m., and this is seared into my memory, because our son was one of the disadvantaged children. And the reality is, sometimes it takes your own corns to be mashed, as we would say, to really make you wake up and pay attention. So my son, many of his peers, in addition to the entire region, had an outcry, because clearly results came in that did not make sense. For example, there was one child that we know of in my son's year group who had 13 CSEC grade 1s. And in Barbados, 13 CSEC is an unusual achievement, a rare achievement. This child also had only A's for every term of the prior 6 years of his academic career. This child ended up with grades that were grade 4s and 5s. There was also another child in Trinidad and Tobago who was the top Trinidad and Tobago maths champion, not only nationally, but he represented Trinidad in a maths Olympiad in Moscow. He got grade 4s and 5s in his CSEC maths exam. This was not just based on emotional children, spoiled children, and mollycoddling parents, which was how we were initially dismissed. The teachers and principals throughout the region were able to compile data which demonstrated how the results for 2020 were grossly diminished from as much as 10 years of prior experience. So that then grounded it in the reality that these grades were not normal. In addition, I was fortunate enough to retain 2 external independent education consultants one based in the UK, who's a maths lecturer, statistician at one of the top UK universities. The other, a Bajan national, but UK resident, who is an education testing professional with multiple PhDs and masters from Harvard and Howard in that domain. And their assessment gave a credible and accurate data point to determine what went wrong. And it was clear from their assessment that the grading model that was used was fundamentally flawed. There is something called grade compression, whereby if an exam is changed the way it was changed, that CXC did in 2020, those children at one end of the spectrum that may not normally do as well in an exam, they might do better. But then, unfortunately, those students at the other end of the spectrum that normally do very well, their results would diminish. And that is exactly what happened. And that, therefore, is the reason why we saw what we had. I have some figures here. It was estimated that 21,000 children out of approximately 160,000 exam candidates, you can work out the math yourself, a significant portion, had requested grade reviews. And to give you an indication of how unusual that is a 1,200% increase for CSEC grade reviews and a 900% increase for CAPE grade reviews versus what obtained in 2019. I won't bore you with the detail of ungraded, but that was similarly ungraded results, and that was similarly hugely distorted from the norm. So arising out of that clear deficiency, we mobilized a considerable number of stakeholders. We were fortunate, due to the outcry, CXC recognized that there was a problem, and they convened a independent review team, which reviewed the situation in October 2020. And their findings mirrored what I have just outlined, that there was a grading shift, which caused, it might have been a minority of students, but it represented tens of thousands of students. And obviously, we want all children to do well. And basically to not just do well, but to have the grades that they're entitled to and that they earned and deserved. Nobody was looking for handouts. They just wanted the grades that they worked for and they deserved. And bear in mind, within the context of all of the challenges of the COVID environment, these children worked and did their best, and they just wanted the grades that they deserved. So in terms of 2020, unfortunately, although we have moved on, those children that were disadvantaged and their families for their mental health, regrettably, even though we went through the grade review process, it's estimated that 98% of those grades remained unchanged. And that is the tragedy, because you can imagine the impact on those children's mental health, also the tangible effect on their academic and career aspirations, and the actual dollar value. For example, in my son's school, it was estimated that up to 30 children were on track for Barbados scholarships, which is our highest academic national award. His year ended up with 2 academic Barbados scholarships, and that is a great reduction of the standard of the norm of that school. We did have some successes as a result of our advocacy. I am proud that our Minister of Education did listen to our advocacy. And this is the group of concerned parents. And we were allowed to be part of the team that devised the Barbados position in terms of presentation at the CARICOM level, as to what the Barbados position was, not just for 2020, but up until 2022, when the pandemic still really affected the administration of CXC in very, very tangible ways. In addition to that, we were fortunate that our Barbados government heard our cry, and they absorbed the grade review fee, which was reduced by 50%, but it was still unfair. And for some people, it would be impossible to meet the grade review for each grade that was deficient. So the Barbados government did absorb that fee, that cost in 2020. There is one lasting benefit for our advocacy that the entire region benefits from. The independent review team was surprised, shall we say, that CXC had a policy where if a child requested a grade review, you risked a degradation or a reduction of the preliminary grade that was awarded by CXC. That was viewed as unfair, and CXC agreed with effect from 2020 to revoke that policy, which was a relatively recent policy that they had enacted a few years prior. So that is a lasting effect of our advocacy that resonates throughout the entire CARICOM region. So that independent review team, which I believe was unprecedented, they accepted our written submissions. They're referred to in the independent review team report of October 2020, which is available on the CXC website, or it was. But it was available, so it can be reviewed at your leisure if you would like. One of the achievements that we are proud of that emanates out of 2020 is that we gave the children a voice. So many of the children reached out to me and said, I didn't know that my voice could be entertained, that I had a right to advocate for myself. And we all recall the mental challenge, the mental impact of the pandemic. And we were able to mentor hundreds of children. The head of the BSTU, the head of the Trinidad and Tobago Teachers Union. We had several Zoom meetings with children, with psychologists, to really support them as they were really struggling with the pandemic impact on education and obviously on their families and themselves personally, and also that was something that we thought was quite an achievement as well. So that student voice is something that I think is very important and cannot be underestimated. I also want to draw to the attention that the United Nations Convention for the Rights of the Child, which is the most widely accepted treaty in all of UN history, all of the member nations, but one, ironically, the US, are signatories. And the UNCRC, that convention, says as a fundamental right, a child has a right to a fair education and also a right to for their voice to be heard. And we feel that that was an achievement that we first initiated in 2020, specific to education, and we are carrying through until the current date. So that is a long spiel relating to how we started in 2020 and that challenge there. In 2020 to 2023, unfortunately, the challenges continued. And in 2021 and in 2022, there was great advocacy relating to the fact that there was no material change in the syllabi content nor exam paper structure, i.e., for example, we lobbied to make question choice questions to have the option of choice rather than mandatory in some papers, and that was not taken up by CXC. And I also need to ground this within the context of what obtained internationally. In 2020, there was a similar grading fiasco in the UK. And our children saw the education authorities in the UK within 48 hours basically take a 180 in their position, perhaps because they have freedom of information legislation that sadly is lacking in most of the Caribbean. And the education authorities led by the minister of education apologized for their grading fiasco. And they said as a stated objective, they wanted to do what they could to ameliorate those grades as much as was practical. And that was largely done in 2020. And our children saw that happening in the UK, our former colonial master, but that did not happen in our CARICOM region in an exam body that is indigenous to our region. Additionally, in other jurisdictions, we saw major material change in their grading and in their exam structure, but we did not see it to the extent that we would have expected for our own children. So within that context, it made it much more egregious, the response within CARICOM. Touching on 2022, we were shocked that there was a decision taken by CXC and in fairness endorsed by COSOD, which is the CARICOM arm, led by the respective ministers of education of the member body, which decided in 2020 to have the exams back to the pre-pandemic date with the same syllabi content, despite the major pandemic challenges which remained. Again, other jurisdictions were adjusting their exams because the pandemic challenges on education, learning, and teaching obviously still manifest then and manifest till today. For example, the lower sixth cohort in 2020, their academic year was delayed by 2 months. So it seemed the height of callousness, if not cruelty, to change that exam date, to delay it, to just give the children and the teachers time to catch up on the syllabus. I have to say the Jamaica Minister of Education lobbied very extensively, I'm sure behind the scenes, but also in the media, for a delay of that exam date. We did as well. The Caribbean Union of Teachers did, led by Dr. Garth Anderson. And I always quote him when he says that the pandemic revealed comorbidities in education, and there were certainly comorbidities, unfortunately, within CXC and also in the wider education ecosystem. So we lobbied intensively. It's quite tragic that the UN Committee of the Rights of the Child Vice Chair and the CARICOM UNICEF representatives all expressed dismay and concern on the decision that was taken to proceed with the exams and the exam structure basically as business as usual and as if the pandemic had never happened. So eventually, literally at the 11th hour, I think the decision might have come down on a Thursday, Friday, and the exams were supposed to commence the following week. There was a decision to delay by 3 weeks, which is embarrassing and could have been prevented if there was a student-centered, empathetic, reasonable approach to education. And that demonstrates a certain disconnect, I would say, between our education authorities and, frankly, the children, students, teachers, and the wider public that they are there to serve. I would also touch on e-testing in 2020 to use the Barbados perspective. We rolled out e-testing of the multiple choice papers throughout all of the schools, and that was challenging. I think we had ambitions to go to that route, but we did not have the capacity. There was not sufficient pilot testing for that. And also I would say that the IT infrastructure was not ready for that. So imagine the poor students in an already stressful environment that is exams, having a situation where they can't access the exam, they may have insufficient devices, and the paper backup might not be there. It was unnecessary. I thought it was unnecessary stress, especially during the lingering pandemic context. So that's where they're at 2022. In 2023, you may be aware that tragically there were security breaches, 2 in 4 weeks, the major one involving the math CSEC paper. And then later there was another breach that was due to, anyway, I won't go into the detail, but it raises the question as to the security chain that governs these papers as they wend their way from CXC to the ministries of education in the respective jurisdictions and then to the centers. And I appreciate that administering an exam in all these jurisdictions is complex, but CXC has been in existence for 50 years. And we do appreciate that there is human error and other nefarious activities that may happen, but that means that the processes must be sufficient to mitigate the impact of human error and human issues relating to security. And so imagine coming out of the intensity of the COVID environment, what that security breach, particularly for the maths paper, did for approximately 60,000 children who take maths every year. Additionally, in Barbados, and I think it replicated elsewhere in the region, there does seem to be a problem with the student-based assessments, the SBAs, how they're uploaded from the schools / ministries to CXC. That was a huge problem in 2020. So it was quite sad that in 2023, it manifested for far too many children. So it ended up with entire classes in certain subjects getting ungraded results, which seems to be the default when the SBA isn't received by CXC. And then when the grades were reviewed and the SBAs were uploaded, even then, for far too many of the students, the grades were clearly not what the students earned. Yes, there's always inevitably surprises and challenges in an exam paper, but teachers know their children, their students, and certainly many children most children are not out to manipulate the system. Many children know how they have performed in an exam. And especially if you have a student that, again, is accustomed getting A's and grade 1s and so on and so forth, and they have practiced and prepared well for the exam. Maybe they might get a grade 2, but a grade 4 and 5, which is what some children got. And that means you have to look back at the system and see what went wrong. And sadly, you do go through the review process, and 9 times out of 10, the results come back unchanged. Imagine the demoralizing of those children, and not those specific children that have been negatively impacted, but their friends are looking on. They're seeing what the children are going through. So imagine then the confidence or lack thereof, the trust in the system that then seeds within our children. So also, I would say that there have been persistent issues year after year, approximately since 2017. And I'm relaying what I have been told by expert master teachers of decades of experience. So don't shoot the messenger. I am the messenger bringing facts. I deal in facts and credible sources. Cape Communication Studies and Caribbean Studies, year after year, schools have been crying out that something is wrong when they see the performance of their past students and then subsequent students. They write to CXC, sometimes CXC ignores them, so I'm told. Then they come back and say, oh, well, your teacher isn't following the syllabus properly, and so on and so forth. I am told that something is very wrong with certain subjects. And so if you're still awake and bearing with me, we're in 2024. And this is the catalyst for all of the activity that I have been doing to bring to the public space and to our education authority, so that something continues to be very wrong. And frankly, every year I keep saying that this is the last year, but then I recall, it scarred within my soul, coming into my son's school and being surrounded by a number of students saying, Auntie Paula, the despair in these that these children were manifesting. Auntie Paula, these are not my grades. These are not my grades. What are we going to do? And that I feel emotional just thinking about it, because to know that year after year, there are other children echoing that same outcry. We have failed our students. We have failed our children collectively as a society, and the powers that be, our education authorities, in ignoring the outcry, but not just the outcry, the fairness and the situation of these children. So here we are, having set the context, set the table. In 2024, Cape Chemistry, paper 2, last week, I was contacted by a number of master teachers in Barbados who, quote unquote, were hopping mad and livid, because when they looked at the exam, that exam paper, again, paper 2 is the long form paper, they estimated a quarter, 30% of those, of the question, or the total marks were based on questions or topics that were not even on the syllabus. And then there were additional questions that PhDs in chemistry could not work out, that were either poorly written, ambiguous, didn't make sense, or were flat out wrong. And again, I am just speaking for what I have been told by master experienced teachers with decades of experience in this subject. And this is not in Barbados, just in Barbados. I spoke with my Jamaican contact. I spoke with Guyana contacts, Trinidad and Tobago contacts. They all say the same thing. That chemistry paper 2, quote unquote, was madness. And to quote a Jamaican teacher, actually I will say he's from Campion College. We were on Antigua Radio. I'm all a days because there's been a lot going on. On Sunday, a chemistry master teacher said that chemistry paper did CXC an injustice. It was not to the caliber of CXC. I communicated with Dr. Wesley, the CEO of CXC. I communicated with my Ministry of Education, raising this concern. I gather teachers are compiling data to write to their respective ministries raising this issue. Dr. Wesley said that the situation was brought to his attention and his team is quote unquote treating with the issue. So that is CAPE Chemistry in 2024. Caribbean Studies, a master teacher in Barbados reached out to me and said she doesn't know what's going on with CXC, how you could have 4 mandatory questions. This is CAPE again, 4 mandatory questions, a huge unwieldy syllabus that's almost impossible to complete. And 2 of the 4 mandatory questions are on the same topic. That does not seem fair. And bear in mind that Caribbean Studies and Communication Studies, just speaking for Barbados, I think it obtains elsewhere in the region, you have to get a grade 1 if you want to be eligible for a national scholarship. And again, that does seem to be unfair, speaking to our relevant ministries of education. In fact, Cabinet, because in Barbados anyway, Cabinet makes a decision relating to our scholarship criteria. Why should a child's academic future be based so heavily on their performance on essentially a non-core subject? So that is Caribbean Studies. CSEC Maths and Add Maths. I've had master teachers regionally commenting on those papers, having challenges in terms of the questions and that they're suboptimal. So, and again, so you're seeing again, this is evidence, again, bringing hardcore data. Too many exam questions, year after year, there are flaws. And what I have elucidated for 2024, I've heard similar comments in prior years. So this is not a new issue. Perhaps in the age of online communication and the CARICOM network that we have been successful in building, perhaps we, the public, are being made more aware of what teachers have been saying for years and what maybe on a smaller level children have been disadvantaged, but they were frustrated, their parents were frustrated by the system and never got their voices heard and the matter dealt with. Also, there was an allegation of the CSEC math paper being leaked. CXC confirmed that was a hoax. But certainly such is the distrust and lack of faith in the system. There is an online petition a regional petition that the students have circulated over the past week, signed by 16,000 individuals, where they say that they don't believe that the leak, they believe that the leak happened, and they're also challenging the detail of the CSEC maths questions, which the teachers subsequently have confirmed that they have issues with as well. And 16,000 60,000 children or 16,000 signatories deserve at the very least the courtesy of an official response. There's also a petition of over 2,600 people circulating relating to the cake chemistry. There's also a potential security breach of the CSEC principles of accounting that CXC has admitted, that has been reported to them, that they're investigating. But here we are two weeks later, and there has been no update to the public as to whether that security breach actually happened or what. So here we are. We've walked through, and I don't want to rush through, but I know I'm conscious of the time. I don't want to.
Ms. Moore, we're gonna have to wrap now so that we can get into some questions.
Yes. So I was told I was given 30 minutes. I believe I'm close to that. So I will quickly say, why have we got here? The CARICOM governance model, some have called it incestuous. At the end of the day, there does seem to be a lack of independent oversight, expert oversight of CXC. For example, in the UK, there's an entity such as Ofqual, which regulates their exam bodies. We do not have that layer. And our former Minister of Education did reiterate our call that there should be independent expert regulation of CXC. There's a lack of accountability. The communication is suboptimal. I gave you examples of flaws in the exam questions that raise issues as to quality assurance in grading, and the exam papers being set. The limited stakeholder engagement is a concern. We do not have a seat at the table. And frankly, the CARICOM governments don't seem to push enough for the accountability that we expect. Legal remedies seem to be limited. We did take CXC to court, and in Trinidad and Tobago, they too took CXC, our entities did take CXC and their ministry to court, but there's diplomatic immunity. And we have to ask ourselves, why is it that the entities whose objectives are to serve us, why is it that they need protection? Okay, so we'll go to the next point. What is at stake? What is at stake if we don't get this right? The reputation of CXC is at risk, the mental health of the children, and loss of trust and confidence. Parents are seeking other exam body alternatives. There's going to be a drop in CXC candidates, which has happened already. The loss of our teaching professionals due to frustration. Solutions. I will end by saying here, I exhort the members of the Kiwanis and the wider public, we have a role to play. Many hands make light work, and there's unity and strength in numbers. And far too often, whether we say we fear recrimination and victimization, too many people are silent. And I think if the public speaks out enough, if the Kiwanis, for example, you are an organization of tremendous influence, if you speak out and help us in raising this with the powers that be, we can finally have a solution to the fundamental problem, which in our view requires a significant review and overhaul of CXC's governance, culture, values, and vision. And it requires an external, independent, expert, independent review of both CXC's internal operations and also how the CARICOM governments, excuse me, hold CXC to account. communication is lacking, and it sadly needs to improve. Our future is at stake. So I will end by thanking you for this opportunity. I hope this is the beginning of an opportunity to further network, build, and strengthen regional alliances. And I just want to say that we come constructively, and as a proud CARICOM national, we wish them the very best, and we want to work to make them the very best and to give them the standard of service that our children are entitled to and deserve. So I thank you, and I've put my contact details here, and you can obtain them from the Kiwanis Club of Kingston. So with that, I thank you very much, and I'm open to any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Moore. I'm gonna, okay, yes, you stop sharing screen. Okay, I think that there's one thing that puzzled me when you said that when there are reviews, they tend to come back unchanged. And it struck me, I don't think you mentioned a lot of issues. Are there as many issues with subjects like mathematics, for example? Could you just tell me and give me that an answer?
I cannot, I have not been able, I don't have access to that level of data. I can only tell you specifically relating to 2020, that certainly the vast majority of those grossly unjust grades, as I said, we did do the data then, and it was 98%. Of those grades, I think CXC themselves in their report of those grades remained unchanged. And it was almost cruel, because it was almost as if they allowed the children to go through the motion and get their hopes up, only then to end up back where they started. And bear in mind, the few grades that were changed, maybe they were changed by a grade, but a 4 or a 5 in a very rare circumstances became a 1 or a 2.
No, but are you telling me specifically about maths? Because that's what I was asking. Or generally? Or
I would say generally? It's a general concern, and I can only say anecdotally. Any teachers that might be present can speak to that, but anecdotally, I would say that year after year, you send, oh, by the way, even the grade review process, back in the day, CXC, when they did a grade review, they actually reviewed the paper as we would think. They would look at the paper, check the content, and so on. They changed the policy. Again, 2017 seems to be a point. I don't know if it was a change of management. And they actually said all they do is add back the tally of the marks. And that's how they do a grade review. Now, they claimed in 2020, they reviewed the grades, but bear in mind, 2020 was a multiple choice, which is electronically computed, plus the SBAs. So, I mean, you can almost say it was a waste of time. That something was clearly very wrong with their grading in 2020, and they never changed the grading. And they have been challenges manifesting since in the grading. Okay,
I'm gonna go to the first person who has their hand up. But the only reason why I raised that is because it would seem to me that if somebody gets a 4 grade and you do a review on a subject like mathematics, it ought to be fairly, well, I don't want to say easy, but I'm thinking it shouldn't be that difficult to determine if the person was, deserved a better grade. But let me leave that now and go to Eurydice. President Eurydice, I think I see your hand up.
Hi, yes, good evening, good evening. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Great presentation. Can you hear me? So I have 2 questions. One, where is the disconnect between the syllabi and the exam paper?
Sorry, the what and the exam paper? I couldn't make out that.
Where is the disconnect between the syllabi and the exam paper? That's question number one. Question number two is a grade review different from a paper review? Because you might be requesting one thing, but the hearer hears something else. Because a grade review is looking at the grade as it is. So we're going to look back at how much they got for each problem or each sentence or whatever. While a paper review is requesting that you look over what the person did and see if you can come to the same or better conclusion. So which is it? That's the question.
Thank you, ma'am. The first question is the disconnect, as the teachers have reported to me, and as I touched on before, relating to the CAPE chemistry paper 2, is that straight up 25 to 30% of the top of the questions were based on topics that were not on the syllabus. They were on the Unit 1 syllabus, but some children don't do Unit 1 before Unit 2. It's not, CXC has confirmed it's not a prerequisite. And in any event, the teachers advise that even the way it was applied to that topic, that Unit 1 topic, excuse me, it was poorly crafted. So again, I am not a teacher. I'm just relaying what the teachers have told me, but that is the issue with the disconnect between the syllabus and what the topics are on the paper. And that apparently has been an issue, not just with this particular paper that has caused the outcry that was brought to my attention last week, but other papers as well, whereby the questions are, the topics in the exam are not represented fairly. Sorry, the topics on the exam are not represented fairly based on what is in this on the syllabus. Your second question on the grade as opposed to paper review, that is precisely the point. Previously, when you requested a grade review, what they did, they looked at the scripts, SBA paper 1, paper 2 scripts, and they reviewed the scripts written by the student that was doing the exam. Now, CXC's policy is that they seem to no longer look at the paper, though frankly, you get different responses. But my understanding is that they just add back up the totals, which really is almost meaningless at this point.
Okay. Thank you for that response. You know, I don't see a hand up right now, but I can see an issue where if there was a problem with uploading SBAs, that's gonna cause a problem. I can see where the same point you're just addressing, you know, if the questions are not on this, or the topic is not on the syllabus, then what is that only in the last 2024 or 2023? Because I'm wondering, hasn't CXC responded to that? Because that should be fairly easy to establish. It either was in the syllabus or it wasn't in the syllabus, and the questions are on the paper. Have they responded to that particular issue? That's pretty finite. That's a finite question.
Mm-hmm. I can only go by what Dr. Wesley communicated to me. I don't know what he's told the respective ministries, but certainly it behooves as a basic respect to those children who wrote that paper, to those teachers that prepared those students, so that those students settle and can focus on the rest of their exams. Surely CXC by now should have come out and made an announcement, even if it's just to say what he said to me. We see that there have been reports that there are challenges. We're reviewing, and we will rest assured We will do what we can to ensure that the grading is adjusted accordingly so that the results are fair. For example, errors do happen in exams. I'm not saying it's unique to CXC. It happens in Cambridge. It happens in other jurisdictions. It is the response that is the problem in CARICOM. In Cambridge, when they recognize there is an error, they come out and say, this is the error. We are going to award full marks to those questions that are questionable. We don't get that publicly. They may do something behind the scenes, but the children never hear, and it's not fair on the children. That is not, it's just is not fair. It's cruel and callous. And that is the message that has been emanating since the dawn of time. There is a aloofness and a remoteness and a lack of accountability, perhaps because they know that they're legally untouchable. You don't get that communication or engagement, both at CXC level, and then frankly, the parents report to me at the ministry level in jurisdictions. It's a problem.
This meeting is very interesting. We have gone beyond the time allotted. Can I have a motion that we have an extension of 10 minutes to complete the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Lots of moving. All right,
Second.
It's seconded, so let us continue.
Okay.
Any other questions? BP Stewart, any other hands up?
I don't see any more hands up right now. I'm just wondering though, this, I know there's a regional aspect to the groups that you are talking about, but somehow I haven't heard an outcry in Jamaica. I think you have Jamaicans who are part of the regional grouping, but what I'm saying is, this is not a topic that I'm aware of, that there's, an outcry in Jamaica about the problems with CXC. I'm not saying, I'm wondering if there's a reason why, like I remember you said something about teachers know how their students perform or will perform. And I kind of have I would put a question mark beside that, because I can remember when a group of students, and I will admit I was involved. I was one of them. And he said to us before that he thinks we will all pass chemistry. And this was a CX. This was CXC. I mean, no, I wasn't doing CXC at the time, but what I meant was that level. I don't remember what they used to call it then, O levels or whatever. And he was totally wrong. He was totally wrong. No, but we never really thought, if we didn't do well in an exam, we just thought that we didn't perform. It ever occurred to any of us that something was wrong with the system.
Wrong with the exam.
But I'm not saying, maybe then it was different, and maybe then there was nothing wrong with the system. Now there may be, but I'm just saying, we have always thought that if we didn't do well, boy, you just had a bad day, or you just didn't, you didn't cut it. So I don't know why there's not much of an outcry in Jamaica, but what I'm gonna promise the folks who are attending is that we're gonna go to the CXC. We're gonna try to get a response from the CXC in a setting like this, to see what they have to say, because I'm sure they're aware of the criticisms that are being, put forward, and let's see what they say. But that's certainly a follow-up that I definitely propose to carry out.
Well, just to say quickly, the point I was going to make, and I said earlier, You do have bad days. You do have surprises. But, you know, you have to say anecdote isn't evidence. And 10,000 Frenchmen can't be wrong. And if you've got a petition signed by 16,000 people and another one signed by 2,600 people throughout the region, that should flag that you should at least investigate the concern. And it could be that maybe I'm just quick. And, you know, and because my organization is not a formal entity, we don't have the bureaucracy that some others have in terms of the process of collating information and going to the head of department and then going to the ministry, and then the ministry goes to CXC, and the public is quite oblivious. So that's my response.
Okay, President DP Dalmo, you can introduce. Well, I should probably.
I see a hand up there.
Oh, okay. Let's take this. Let's take this response from Cleo Bell. Lewis.
Just to say that the nature of outcry is different, because on the day of the CXC exam, after the exam, I saw statuses of young people, and these are bright young people, smart young people, engaged young people. One child said, "Those were the worst 2.5 hours of my life." Another child who has already been accepted to UE and really doesn't even need, from her 5th form performance, is off to do biochem, and doesn't need to put herself through this, said, "What did I just experience?" She has 11 ones. So the outcry is taking place from the most critical stakeholders, the children themselves, and they are speaking loudly, but through social media and in their own fora. And the question you have asked, not to say you intentionally meant this, but it is kind of a reflection of the broader issue of the silencing and the ignoring of children's voices. They do speak, but they do not have that channel, they do not have that access, nor the knowledge of how to bring about the change. But I tell you, they do speak, they speak loudly, and they're not just whining, they feel it, because these are children who are putting the hours. So the work that Mrs. Moore is doing is important, and even if there isn't an official commentary from the authorities in Jamaica, the children across the region are speaking. They have WhatsApp groups with thousands. What the West Indies Federation has failed is happening right now, because there are groups with thousands of kids together in WhatsApp, on TikTok, in all these threads and things they call it, engaging around this issue.
Thanks for that comment, Cleo. I was also thinking, though, in terms of the adults advocacy. You know, there's not that. That's really what I was thinking about in terms of I'm not hearing that, but, and I have no doubt that the children are talking, but I was thinking more about adult advocacy as opposed to what is happening in Barbados and in probably and probably more of the countries in the Eastern Caribbean. I'm just wondering now, why there isn't much of an adult advocacy in Jamaica about these issues? That's really what I'm questioning. Okay.
Well, I call on your NCPTA, whom I've reached out to, also the counterparts throughout the region, to perhaps familiarize or refamiliarize themselves with the latest issues, and perhaps to represent these kids and their teachers as well. That perhaps is one entity that can assist.
Okay. I think I see President Newton has joined us. Maybe President Newton, if you could do if you have seen the agenda, DP Dalmo is down to do the thank you. So maybe you could introduce him to do the thank you. And I'm glad you were able to join.
Thank you, DP Stewart. Yes, good evening, everyone. Good evening, special good evening to our guest speaker. I caught just a part of it, so I will have to go back, and thankfully we have it on YouTube, so I will go back and take every drop of what was said. At this point, I understand DP Dalmo will be given the vote of thanks. He will represent us and say what we all want to say, because this is a very important topic. Even those of us who don't have children right now, some will have grandchildren who are getting to that stage. So at this point, I'm going to ask DP Dalma if he could just come forward and represent us with the vote of thanks.
Thank you, President Newton. Auntie Paula, thank you for your outstanding presentation on the CXC examinations. Your expertise and insights on CXC captivated us, and it has left a lasting impression on me. In particular, I appreciate how you outlined the concerns and issues and challenges of CXC, how advocacy approach these topics. You also outlined the lack of student-centered approach to our education system, and I'm quite sure that that is not applicable only to CXC. You outlined the problems which existed in 2017, and you have even told us of the problems which exist today. And you have given us some recommendations as to how these can be addressed. Your passion for the subject was evident, which elevated the overall experience of everyone who listened on this network. Your contribution played a crucial role in our understanding of what goes on at CXC, and I'm grateful for the time and effort that you put into sharing your knowledge. The positive feedback from persons who are here, I'm quite sure, will be evident in the near future. Today's technology has allowed us some great advantages. Can you hear me? Oh, that's it. Right. It has made it possible for you to sit in Barbados and address us in Jamaica and in fact across the Caribbean. But it has robbed me of the privilege of presenting to you in person this a certificate of appreciation, which is our presentation to all our guest speakers to show how happy we are, and as a reward to you for taking the time to make presentation. But I'm surely going to find a way to get it to you in the near future. Look out for it. Once again, thank you. And I look forward to working with you and your organizations. And I know I'm speaking on behalf of the Kiwanis Club of Kingston in that we are prepared to join the advocacy for the improvement of education in our region. Once again, thank you very much, Auntie Paula.
Thank you again. It was indeed an honor and a pleasure to be with you.
Yeah. Thank you, and back to you, President Newton.
Oh, DP Dalma, I'm just a guest tonight, sir. So whoever has been chairing the meeting, I will be happy to ask them to continue and to say my thank you.
President Newton, boy, I'm so sorry. Well, let's put it this way. If I'm officially the president this evening, then you can be fined.
well, that's okay. That's okay. Somebody will pay it for me.
Sarge Duki.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe he's on the call.
He's not on.
DP Dalma, I suggest you just do a blanket fine.
Okay. Well, for such a wonderful presentation this evening, I don't think our fine this evening will be a punishment. It's a payment for the wonderful experience of being on. So I would just put it at $200 for all the Kiwanians on the line. And I'm going to search the bank account and make sure that it is there.
All our members.
All our members, $200. All right, so let us move on. We are getting close to it. Notices and announcements, DLG Willie.
Yes, Thank you, DP Dalma. Regarding our notice and announcements,
It was okay.
Really good.
Oh, thank
I
you.
mean,
those of you who may have seen a message on your WhatsApp earlier this afternoon, we have been invited by the Kiwanis Club of Nation Builders through the president,
you really deep running
June,
stuff. And this stuff, I don't know any of this.
collaborate with her in the painting the mural at Mount Alvernia Prep School.
It's amazing.
That's, those of you who don't know, that's on Old Hope Road, across the road from the Little Theatre. And as well as Cyber Connect. And I believe that Joan is on the call, and I'm just going to invite Joan very quickly just to give us a summary of what we plan to do on Thursday morning. Joan, are you there?
Yes, Uncle Willie. Yes, so we are planning to, beautify the school, of course. They have a nice mural at the front of the school that needs some touch-ups to brighten, and being that it is the entrance of the school, we wanted to play a part in helping to make that happen. So we will be starting at 8 a.m. Please bring your hats and your gloves and your paintbrushes. If you have, there's a picture on it on the flyer as well. So if you do have extra paint at home, or if you are able to source paint too, it will be greatly appreciated. So just bring tools with you to assist in this wonderful initiative. We also, for Nation Builders, it's considered to be a tour, a Labor Day tour. So we actually start at Alvernia, and then we go over to the Chapel of Christ AME, which is down the road from it. So it is on Solarfield Road, right across from the examination depot, where the young people at that church are actually trying to beautify and do a garden project there. So we're going to help to just clean and remove some excess debris from that space. So we invite you all to come and work with us. Together we are stronger, and as Kiwanians, we help the children of the world. So thank you for the opportunity, Uncle Willie. Blessings.
Dale Jubilee.
Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, just to remind the members of the Barbie Pride Planning Committee, we are meeting on Thursday evening. Time is to be advised by the committee chairman, DP Marcel. This is regarding our annual Barbie Pride at 11 Fairway Avenue on Friday, May 31, between 10:30 and 3:30. Choice of 3 meals, either fish fry, barbecue chicken, or crispy pork. Cost is $2,500. I believe all members on the call this evening already have tickets, but if you can sell any tickets, we'd be most grateful. You can contact me, or you can contact DP Marcel or DP Zalma. Insofar as interclubbing opportunities, there are two main ones I need to highlight. We have invitations too. That's tomorrow evening. That's Kiwanis Club of Capital City will be celebrating their 10th anniversary. And that's been held at the Betting Gaming and Lottery, 78 CEF Hagley Park Road. That begins at 7 p.m. There's a cost, I think it was $500. And then the following Wednesday, that's May 29th, the Kiwanis Club of West St. Andrew will be celebrating their 45th anniversary at the Medallion Hall, 53 Hope Road, Kingston 10. Cost for that event is $2,000, and the dress a little more formal. They ask you to wear suit, business suit. DP Dalma, those are all the notices and announcements and interclubbing opportunities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Is DP Marcel on?
No, he extends his apology, so I think we can
DP
overlook that.
Stewart, do we have the thought of the week?
No, we have to skip that one. It's myself was supposed to do it.
Okay, everyone, we have now come to the end of our agenda, and I'm asking you to join me in raising a toast to.
Sorry, you didn't ask if any member from any other club.
Oh, I'm
are
sorry.
joining, yeah.
I'm sorry. Any other announcements from visiting Kiwanians?
Good evening, DP Dalma. Great
Yeah.
job. This is Director Designate Crystal Heaven from the Kiwanis Club of Montego Bay. On the 31st, we'll be having our fish fry as well. So if anyone that are interested, if you're closer to the Montego Bay region, please feel free to reach out to any one of our members in order to make your orders. And if you're closer to Kingston, the Kiwanis Club of Kingston will be having their Barbie Fry. Reach out to any one of their members too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the punch.
Director Designate Crystal, you should organize with Nuts for Express to send some meals into Kingston, man.
I want Kiwanis Club of Kingston to make some money as well. I want to share. Sharing is caring. But thank you.
But you didn't specify a venue. How that where the
Oh, RADA. Okay, we'll be at the RADA office. That's in West Green. Yes, and that's on the 31st of May. Thank you.
Cost of your tickets?
The fire.
What's the cost of your tickets?
Only 1,700 Jamaican dollars.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Anybody else have any announcements? Kiwanian or visitor? Okay, there being none, we have now come to the end of our agenda, and I'm asking you to raise your glass with me in a toast to Kiwanis International, Jamaica land we love. Thank you for a wonderful